Sound is an art of dynamism and fluency, and music is in constant redesign. As long as tools are rediscovered, the development of tools are rediscovered by the technologies of our time, consequently, music, instruments, and musicians started to create a new chapter in our history where we apply these tools and we work with current demands and necessities. Today, I would like to share with you a 4 years research development of a case instrument design, a case study of instrument design, a journey directly connected to my personal development and artistic development as a musician and composer. And this instrument was a reflection of the current demands of its time. And this is Canaro. This is the instrument I have been building. It's an interactive and electroacoustic cello. Has 16 strings. And I'm Raffaele. I describe myself as a composer, as a cellist, as a programmer. But only recently I started to introduce myself only as a person that is very curious to apply experimental music. And this difference I will tell you during this whole presentation. I like to work and integrate values and important meaningful messages in my artworks to share with my audience. And I have been trying to find a way to integrate my creativity and my composition skills into my performance. Recently, I have been reflecting also about my position as a musician in this society. How can I integrate values and virtues that I find important to my music practice, and I can share this with my audience. I started 4 or 5 years ago to get in touch and to learn how to build instruments, because in my own belief, I found that they were the nucleus of any music practice. They represent a nucleus of any music practice. But maybe we should give a step back at this moment and ask, what exactly is music instruments? Well, you might have been thinking, girl, I'm thinking about my instrument, my guitar, my voice, my violin. But nowadays we have to reflect a little bit about it. Is this only musical instruments that are existing right now? In the words of Eric Hornbostel, we can consider music instruments anything that sound can be produced intentionally. In this way, when we use saw machines, empty chairs, and piano and radio machines, such as in the works of Hugo Morales, John Cage, and Cathy Van Eyck, can be also considered instruments, right? Thor Magnusson, in his book Sonic Writing, also mentioned that, well, maybe we cannot even consider, do we need really to consider that they have to generate sound? Since recently, we have instruments or smartphones that we barely listen music, and we can record and mix on it. But we also generate music with algorithms. We don't also have to listen it. And to finalize this reflection of what a music instrument is, Ryan from the Sonology department also mentioned that usually instruments represent some sort of a conceptual model. In this way, the piano, for example, would represent a temperament tuning system. And with all this reflection in mind, I started to see all these questions like in the works of my friends, and also in myself, how I compose and what I define a music instrument or a tool for me. It became very difficult to consider cello as my main instrument as long as I started to develop my own sound integrity or my music practice in a different way. As long as I want to be called as a cellist, or as long as I like to evaluate myself how good I play cello, this doesn't make any sense anymore, because this instrument is designed in a time where and demands that I'm not living in. So let's say I need a new music practice, and that's how I started Canoe in 2018. When I started to build these instruments at the KBK here at The Hague, the University of Art, um, and this became a journey since its beginning. Um, I started to work and imagine Canoe as an instrument of multiple control, especially because I wanted to express how can I maintain voices as a composer into a music performance. But as long as I developed further, I started to be also instigated. How could I apply those values that you're seeing into my instrument? How can I make this instrument a learning experience for me? How can I integrate craftsmanship? How can I communicate or interact with my audience? And how can I automate and use technology to find a new way to communication and artistic expression? Or finally, how can I use music as a representation? And all these things, they started to be in a sort of a testing cycle. So every prototype I did was based on this relationship between design, testing, and feedback. And this cycle was kind of the methodology of my work as a musician and an instrument builder. And the conclusion of those projects were research projects or case studies divided in two areas: value design research projects, where I test a specific value into a music project or into Knorr's design, or technical research projects that are more related to my craftsmanship and my music practice. I will talk only about those two today because it's already enough. And starting with communication, with my intention to make my music practice closer to my audience. I wanted to find a way to communicate and to engage with my audience nowadays, in times where we can get a smartphone and watch anything we want in the comfort of our homes. And this question was not only a personal question. This topic became important to art councils, art venues during the past years. We want to understand what makes people go to concerts nowadays. In a research study of the League of American Orchestras, we can realize that most art venues, they have the ability to retain a lot of new audience, because to get a lot of new audience, but they have difficulty to maintain it. And we can also see that the biggest interests that these people, because of why these people come to concerts, are related to four, or let's say three interests. They want to find in the experiences: music, information, social experience, and access. This was the target goal for me, to imagine how can my music practice become a result of those experiences. And therefore, I started to create an artwork called This Isn't Solo, and where we are collaborating a musician. In this case, it was me collaborating with an audience through the smartphone. So the audiences would change geometries, and those changes would be some sort of like data or code for the sound, to change my sound. And this kind of practice, we want to achieve these three aspects: accessibility, to allow access and intuitive understanding. So people would be drawing and changing, for example, um, the size, the rotation. Music information is part of that. We are allowing people having to have music practice with me and to customize in their own ways of thinking and expressing themselves. And to finish, also, social experience was also important in this artwork. We wanted to design some sort of a storytelling mode where people come from introspective mode and go to extroverted. The first prototype happened in Gaudiamus 2021, and it was very nice. I have a small part to share. So this whole video is on YouTube. You can access anytime on my YouTube channel. But basically, as you can see, there is like the first phase is coming, and now it's the second phase. People are coming from clicking, and they go to sending geometric forms to me. In the second prototype, it's gonna happen now in Amare in my graduation concert. You can see Sabrina and I. We started to reflect about the stage itself, because we found that this one was not so inclusive. Let's say the audience was still far from me. There was still a lot of things to look, and in the second prototype we want to make everything a one unity. And we are still working with a storytelling mode, with an addition that in the fourth phase people would be playing the melody that I play during the whole piece. Well, there is findings already. This research is not finished, but I would like to share with you some thoughts, especially about the fact that this kind of practice can overcome the fear of exposition. People feel less afraid to share and to interact with me. Most of us, when we go to concerts, we don't want to feel exposed. It's a bit, or if we want, we get a bit shy. And it's nice to share a way that people can really engage with us. And therefore, I leave to you the question, because of course it demands more research to say it's possible to engage audiences in this way, but could this be a solution for overcoming or to reach audience engagement? And no goals. It was clear for me from the beginning that the more I want to get control over music choices, or either to have too many abstractive ideas, the further or the less close I get from my audience, because they are there for the first time trying to understand everything. This is one research project. Another one I would like to share with you, it's related to my craftsmanship. The interplay between composing, creating an artwork, an interface, an instrument. This kind of relationship became some sort of craftsmanship for me, and I would like to share these thoughts with you now. Since in the words of Mariah Bauman, we can also see that most composers working with electroacoustic music seem to overlap this transition between composition and instrument design. For most of them, the interactivity between those areas, they make the form itself of the artwork. And that's also what Koenig says in this little statement, that the relationship of things they kind of make evident the surface or like the format of its sounds. In this way, the way that we learn nowadays music composition in the conservatories seems a bit confusing, because usually we only learn those three parts mostly. But but what about if we start to ask what is the instruments, how they are built, and how can I make it better? Or let's not say better, but how can I make it something meaningful to me? And how can my interface help me or enhance my artistic expression? In this way, interface design becomes close to your technique as a musician, or your composition practice. Your composition practice becomes close to industrial design, and industrial design become part of a music performance. This cycle is called a spiral cycle, and it's defined by some sort of like research time, where things start to get in shape, or at least in your head, and then it goes through a cycle of testing and doing prototypes, until a consolidation of a very specific idea and format in a full concert. This kind of like some sort of a craftsmanship, because yeah, I am a composer, and this became part of my practice. So while I was building the instruments, I was also testing it and thinking, how can I apply ideas into my artwork? And through this relationship, three albums came from the last year, and I would love to share with you one artwork that I like a lot, from Chasing Breath. So I think this is a little bit enough for now. You are very welcome to listen in Bandcamp or on YouTube or iTunes, those artworks. I would also like to share with you some thoughts about collaboration, which they brought so much different aspects to me in feedback from my artworks. So as long as I was working with in different kind of interdisciplinary works, I was always getting a very different type of feedback, and very important for my development. One of the works one of the collaborations I have been working is with Timo, and for example, we are both part of a community called Netherlands Coding Life, and we start to research about our own the relationship or the communication between our own instruments. And you can see how many feedback for me I can get from an experience like this. Like, actually, we both get a lot of feedback. So Timo is controlling my instruments with his live coding platform, Mercury. And besides all, it's much more fun to work together. And I want to share also some findings here, especially how this kind of practice changed my way of seeing music composition, demanding much more a global view of perspectives, and it was stimulated by these crossovers, and how this iterative design practice became part of my craftsmanship as a musician. New lessons, I can say new lessons because there's no non-goals, but one thing I would love to share and with you, it's about not working alone. The more you know, the more you should share and work with people. With this all said, we have to find some conclusions here. There's too much information in this research, and at least for now, I would love to share with you the questions I made to myself 2 years ago when I started this master, and they are related to how I define myself or my relationship with my instrument. So, as I shared in this research, the way that my relationship between my artistic expression has changed since I started to work with the values and virtues I find important for my life, my personal development, and my artistic expression. It became much more fun, motivating, and it became always a laboratory for me to find a root in this, or like to find a conclusion in this work. And my relationship with music has changed a lot. I have to be honest with you. Personally, I was fighting a lot. Mostly, how can I define myself as a composer or a cellist, especially a cellist, because the demand or like the specific parameters that we have nowadays, they are completely different than the ones I believe. I don't believe we should be virtuous musicians to build and to be expressive. So nowadays, my relationship with music is much more different. It is much more defined. What is success for me? And this is so much more important instead of asking what is success for others. And of course, my relationship with my instruments became much more constructive because I don't feel like I should work with demands and with necessities that are not part of my research practice or my desire as an artist. And to finalize all this research, I would like to encourage you to rethink about your music practice and your instruments. Could you make your practice a bit different in a way that it makes it meaningful to you? And integrative. Maybe you are a photographer and musician and you like to integrate those both things. How can you make that possible? I special thanks for all the collaborators and mentors of this research. And of course, if you would like to help and contribute to this research, please share your opinions in this form, in this QR code. And of course, you can always text me. And I'm always available. And thank you so much for watching. Looking forward to listen from you.